Testing 1, 2. Please be upstanding for His Honourable the Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Please take a seat, thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Wokingham Borough Council. My name is Councillor Adrian Mather. I am the Mayor of Wokingham and I will chair this meeting. Before we start the business set out in the agenda, I would like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. There are no fire drills planned this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building via the nearest exit and gather at muster point 2, which is located in the car park to the rear of the building. Please can I remind you that you do need to stand when speaking in the chamber. When speaking, please speak directly into the microphone. If councillors turn away from the microphone, the sound will not be picked up for online attendees. Can councillors ensure that your nameplate is clearly displayed in front of you? And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. Are there any apologies tonight?
We have apologies for absence from Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, Councillor Norman Jorgensen, and we have Sam Akhtar, who's attending online.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think I also need to, I'm not quite sure how to put this, submit a non-apology for Jordan Montgomery, who I believed would not be able to attend through illness, but despite his illness, he is striving to get here. He will be late, however.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we move on to minutes of the previous meeting. May I sign the minutes of the Budget Council meeting held on the 20th of February 2025 as a correct record. May I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare an interest in any item on the agenda? Yeah. Andy, do you want to go first, please?
It's 123.2. I am the volunteers of Reading Hong Kong CIC.
Thank you, Andy. Mark, would you like to go now?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to declare an interest in item 113 as I'm president of Wokingham Town Football Club.
Thank you, Mark. And Greg, please, finally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to declare an interest in item 122, statement from council-owned companies, as I'm employed by Optalis.
Thank you, Greg. No. Anyone else? No? Okay. Now we move on to Mayor's announcements. On the 25th of February, I was really pleased to see that the local charity, Freely Fruity, received the King's Award for Voluntary Service from the Lord Lieutenant of Berkshire. This award is a very significant award and is the group equivalent of an MBE. So well done, Freely Fruity. At last week's annual volunteer thank you meeting, I was very pleased to hand out awards to the deserving local volunteers. There was a really good showing from lots of charities last week, but I would like to remind everyone that your mayor always needs more nominations for mayoral awards. So if you know anybody that's working above and beyond, please nominate them for an award. Thank you. And finally, I also attended the annual iftar meeting at Reading University, which was the first time I'd been to an iftar dinner, which was absolutely fantastic food, which was co-sponsored by the Dialogue Society, which has the excellent mission of trying to get all different communities talking to each other. In terms of the human experience, I believe that we have a lot more in common with each other than we realise. Thank you. We move on to public question time. I would like to remind everyone that supplementary questions must relate either to the original question or the response that is given to the question and must be no longer than 1 minute. I would also like to remind executive councillors that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. I believe we have 2 public questions tonight. Ashley Pearce, are you here tonight, or are you online?
Online.
Ashley, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you. According to the Network Wellbeing...
I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Do you want to exit the meeting and come back into the meeting? You're very, very quiet. Maybe we'll move forward with the question from Mr. Andy Croy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council Constitution 4.2.11.4 says motions must be about matters for which the Council has a responsibility for or which affect the Wokingham Borough. Motions will be rejected if A, they are not matters the Council has responsibility for or affect the Borough. Agenda item 123.2 relates entirely to matters which are not the responsibility of the Council and which do not affect the Borough. Many residents of Wokingham who care passionately about matters outside the Borough and are deeply affected by matters outside the Borough. Rejoining the European Union, leaving the ECHR and the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine are just some examples. On occasion, I have been requested by residents to take up the issue of the occupation of Kashmir. I've explained Council must only debate matters the Council has a responsibility for or which affects the Borough. Clause 4.2.11.4 is included in the Constitution to keep the attention of councillors firmly fixed on the affairs of the Borough, however frustrating that may be. Where residents have concerns about any matter outside the responsibility of the Council or outside the Borough, is not the most appropriate way to raise this concern to contact your Member of Parliament.
Thank you for your question, Andy. As you know, as one of Wokingham's residents, you have attended our Lunar New Year event and cannot fail to have noticed the some estimated 5,000 former Hong Kong residents that have moved into the borough. I understand that Reading and Wokingham combined are now one of the biggest former Hong Kong populations in the country. Our residents are very concerned about the large Chinese embassy that is being built in London and the influence that the Chinese government is exerting on the wider world, and many local people have been there to protest. It is the Council's role to represent our residents, and the scale of numbers that we are talking about here, about who are involved in these protests, do warrant our attention. The embassy is within the UK, and it is a commutable distance that is different from, say, something to do with the EU or any of the other examples that you give us. Also, there is a number of examples where the Council has considered issues outside of its boundaries, but that are affecting its residents, such as the Transport for London motion 501 on the 20th July 2023 that was proposed by Charles Margetts, where he asked us to write to the Mayor about the cost of one-day travel cards, and also the Winter Fuel Payments motion 524, which Pauline Jorgensen asked us to write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer on the 24th of October 2024. Regarding the constitutional points that you made, officers considered very carefully whether the proposed motion met the criteria set out in the Constitution. It is accepted that there was a fine balanced judgment to be made, but in this instance it was concluded that it's acceptable given the impact on the significant number of the borough's residents. Thank you.
Andy, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. The criteria you've described apply to many issues, and it still doesn't pass the threshold of responsibility of the council or affecting the borough itself. We have far more people going to, I don't know, Spain on holiday than we have going to demonstrations in London. So, but we do not raise issues in Spain, for example, but you're expecting us to care about issues in London. I disagree with the interpretation of officers, I've got to say that. Were the writers of the Constitution wrong to expect councillors to firmly focus on matters within the borough?
I think it's a matter of what is being affected. This embassy, for instance, is being built here in the UK. It's nearby. And it is things that are affecting people who are residents of this borough. I mean, we could argue if something was being built in Reading, for instance, it may well affect people who live here. And it's the large number of residents that are being affected. I mean, it's a judgment call that the officers make. And is it affecting a lot of our residents? And is it based in the UK, which in this case it is? And that would be the difference. It could be protesting about anything that our residents are going to affect our residents on a daily basis. And if one was to consider, if you were to be that much concerned about it, the simple answer would be to ask for a clarification in the Constitution. I hope that makes sense.
Right, let's try and go back to Ashley Pearce. Ashley, are you there, please?
I am. Can you hear me? Sound working this time?
We still can't hear you, Ashley. I don't know what's going on.
Sorry,
Have I got
Mr.
the
Mayor,
questions?
can I just answer the question and we can take it as having been put?
I didn't hear you, Prue. So you can say,
I'm very willing to answer the question. We can just take it as having been put by the questioner.
sorry, please do that then, Prue.
Thank you. I'm sorry that we can't hear you, Ashley. So all statutory guidance that governs how schools operate, including in relation to staff, are shared and signposted to all school leaders to ensure they are aware of their wellbeing responsibilities under the Department for Education. And I have a list of some of those which will appear in the minutes of the meeting. Gillian Cole, our Head of Education Partnerships, engages leaders on these topics as part of her regular leadership drop-in sessions, and Vicky Lewandon ensures governors are reminded regularly to check on the wellbeing of their head teachers. For schools that purchase their HR support from Wokingham, we have also provided information on how schools may wish to offer an employee assistance programme to staff, and also our school's HR hub pages contain information on a free helpline for education employees to access support and counselling. There are also links to useful resources and websites to help with health and wellbeing. And the HR service and health and safety service can also offer advice on stress management and stress risk assessments. And finally, the Service Director of Education and SEND holds termly meetings with school and education employees union representatives at the school's workforce forum.
Thank you, Prue. That concludes public questions. Andy, you're very welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but please can I ask you to view the meeting from the public gallery. Thank you. Now we move on to petitions. Does anyone wish to submit a petition? Right, okay. School. Thank you. Please, can you hand your petition to Democratic Services staff, who will pass it to the appropriate officer? And that's done. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm catching up. Sorry, please, you have 3 minutes to speak to your petition.
Hello.
I present our petition on behalf of 2,287 students, parents, staff and members of the Embrook community and wider community in Wokingham to Wokingham Borough Council to ensure it keeps its promise to build the Embrook new sixth form facilities. The Embrook, as you know, is a successful secondary school in the heart of Wokingham for 60 years. Clive Jones MP recently visited and commended the school in Parliament for its 2024 A-level results, which are in the top 1% in the country. Even with independent schools included, the Embrook is ranked school number 14th. With progress and attainment being well above average, the only school in Wokingham to have achieved this year. WBC should join us in being proud of the Embrook's track record and this recent success. In 2022, WBC requested that Embrook accept additional pupils beyond its capacity to alleviate the secondary school places shortages within the borough. The Embrook was one of 3 schools to do this, in return for site improvements, as is the only school not to have had those agreed improvements completed. WBC agreed to provide capital for the new sixth form facilities, the plans for which were shared during public consultation in November 22, approved by the Planning Committee on the 9th of March 23, and scheduled to open this September 25. The Embrook honoured its part of the deal by agreeing to convert the old sixth form facilities into a larger dining room extension to house the growing school population. The sixth form students moved into porter cabin style accommodation with very limited space. This continues to be the place where 143 sixth formers independently study, sharing 28 chairs and 40 computers. The new sixth form facilities remain unfunded by WBC, unbuilt, with no clear timeline or confirmation of this commitment. We need that honoured. We need WBC to fulfil its promise. Therefore, the Embrook is immediately asking for 3 things. The first, an immediate allocation of committed funding for the project within the WBC budget. 2, a clear plan with specific start and finish dates for the construction of the new facilities. And third, the preservation of the existing planning permission, which is set to expire in March 26. As a Year 9 parent, the promise of the new sixth form facilities was one of the main reasons why we chose the school for our son, along with many other families. The demand for sixth form places continues to increase, with a record 354 applications for this September. The space is the main limiting factor for growth and further success. The new sixth form facilities have been unexpectedly delayed. The education of Embrook students is being compromised, and this is not acceptable. And as a matter of fairness, respect for your communities and commitment, and the support for our community's educational need, it is imperative that the Council acts immediately to support the Embrook as it promised in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you for presenting the petition, Elizabeth. As you're a member of public, the same sort of criteria apply to you. So we're very happy for you to stay in the meeting, but please could you go to the public gallery? Thank you very much. Councillors are asked to note that there is a supplementary agenda for this next item, which is also concerning a petition, which includes an altered motion to that listed on the agenda. The paper has been published and copies are around this chamber. I would like to invite Councillor Nagy Nagella, the petition organiser, to present this petition. Nagy, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. At the beginning of the year, as many of you are aware, Lib Dems have planned to implement car parking charges across multiple car parks in the borough. These car parks are facilities that support sports, leisure activities, school drop-offs, local shopping, and businesses. It should be no surprise that residents were horrified by this. Indeed, in just 48 hours, Wokingham Labour councillors have collected enough signatures to enable us to call for a formal debate on our petition. While we acknowledge that Lib Dems have agreed to suspend plans to implement charges at Cantley Park, but the threat is not gone away. We are told that user groups of Cantley Park will be consulted as to how the running costs for this vital facility will be used. What this suggests is that the users will still be asked to pay, be it in the parking charges or placing the burden on the clubs they belong to. Let us not forget the importance that our recreational spaces have on our residents. As an example, Cantley is home to many activities, like a vibrant theatre that creates its own productions, hockey club which has about 20 teams, and the participants or the hockey players come from different parts of the Berkshire, and junior football league which accommodates at least 300 students, and we also have women's and adult football teams. And we also have dog walking groups, tennis clubs, and women who use this park as a safe space to meet for exercises. The other threatened car parks are venues that are used by parents wanting to ensure their children get to school safely, to and fro from schools. Community-minded residents wanting to support local businesses. People collecting takeaways from the many brilliant restaurants, many of which are independent businesses. Those visiting Shinfield School Green Centre for everything from its community cinema to its library and cafe. There is also a feeling of what will be next. As we know, the budget passed last month originally said that there would be a review of access to free parking at Carnival Pool. Residents want certainty that the council isn't planning to introduce car parking charges by stealth. With so many residents affected by proposals to start charging residents, it is no wonder that there was an outcry and the U-turn has been welcomed. However, we are calling on the council to go further in this pledge to residents so they can have certainty, not at least as the executive can still implement charges by publishing a TRO, without the need for consulting the council. Our motion is clear, reasonable, and necessary, and gives Wokingham residents the security they need. It not only talks about Cantley Park, but all car parks next to areas where the primary purpose is sports or recreation. That includes Ashenbury Park, Laurel Park, Chalfont Park, Chestnut Park, and the pitches in Range Green, which are due to open soon. It protects free parking for leisure centre users and support our small businesses and community facilities. Before I conclude by urging you to support this petition this evening, I want to take you through a few things that happen at Cantley Park. So, as an example, Cantley Park, as I explained before, has about 250 football students who are kids, girls and boys, and on every Saturday there are matches that are played at the Cantley Park, and it is not just for Wokingham residents, but the residents come across the borough. Either it is sometimes from Henley as well. So it is not just Norris Ward or Shinfield or Embrook or anywhere, it is across the borough. So if we start charging car parks on Cantley, it will take away kids from their favorite sport. It will also put financial burden on parents who are already struggling with the increased costs. And again, losing valuable volunteers who support this ecosystem. And the impact of this parking will be felt by neighboring estates. I will quote you an example of a parent who I have spoken to. So the parent currently pays about $220 as an example to the club on a yearly basis to train their kids. But if the parking charges have gone in and been implemented, it is going to cost the parent about $550 a year. And this is a joke. So, yeah, that is the level of impact it's going to have on a single parent. And imagine the impact it's going to have on all the football kids who play football and hockey and tennis as well. So,
Nagy,
yeah.
Nagy, your time's up, unfortunately.
Thank you. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does any councillor wish to speak on this item? That's 1, 2, 3. If you take the Labour and do the Conservative and Labour, just keep your hands high just for a second while we take a note of you. Alex as well. Thank you. You can put your hands down now. Thank you. Anybody getting on, mate? No. Can we start with Kay Golder, please? Gilder?
I will be supporting this motion. We should be encouraging all our residents to engage in sporting and leisure activities, to enjoy our parks and exercise and pleasure, also to attend our leisure centres for healthy community engagement. Facts: 64% of all adults in the UK are overweight or obese. This costs the NHS £6.4 billion per year on on obesity-related diseases. We should not even consider charging car parking fees on any of our leisure facilities, as this will actively discourage our residents from using these. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mark Ashwell, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As your Executive Member for Business, Sport and Leisure, I'd like to thank our Labour councillor friends for helping us get the spotlight on our car parks that serve sport and recreation and our local parades and shops. This especially applies to Cantley Park, the jewel in our North Wokingham crown. We've taken this facility for granted for far too long, and I'm personally guilty of taking Cantley Park and all it's done for me for granted for over 50 years. I've always found that the fear of loss is a great motivator, and this has certainly been the case in considering the potential loss of free car parking. Considering the principle of car parking, or considering the principle of charging to park our cars to fund our facility is bringing our Cantley community together. As mentioned before, we've got key stakeholders: Wokingham Theatre, Cantley House Hotel, South Berkshire Hockey Club, the Bowmen of Burley, GD Tennis, Ashridge Park Football Club, Rees Rangers Football Club, Reading Football Club Community Trust and Wokingham Town Football Club. I'm the president. They called you that to stop you leaving. Mind you, this might get me the sack. Regular users: Wokingham Health Walks, Woodley Pensioners, Reading Hong Kongers, Precision Academy, Dolphin School, Hong Grange School and Luckley House School, 3 private schools. We need to come to terms with a facility that's losing £50,000 per annum, and that's just to stand still, and it's badly in need of further investment. So we're planning 3 meetings with stakeholders in 2025. All have been contacted. We're going April, June and September, this to gather options and work up an action plan. And this is likely to include a discussion, don't boo me, around some form of car parking charges in the future. We need to increase income to cover costs or contribute to reducing costs. We need to work together to generate external funding, and looking how this facility in its widest sense could be managed for the public good. To have a proper Cantley community-led exploration, nothing must be left off the table, because something must be done to nurture the jewel in our North Wokingham crown. This also applies to the other smaller car parks, such as Avery Car Park in Finch Hampstead. On talking to local traders, a change in regime could be welcomed, not least to revisit its use and to deter parkers who are not shopping. The investigation could even unlock an adjacent car park run by others. So look, I welcome this opportunity to work together and enable our businesses to lead in finding the solutions. Because of this, I cannot support a motion that restricts our choices. And I'd like to finish with a quote to our Labour colleagues from the great Billy Bragg. One step forward, two steps back. Will politics get us the sack? Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Freeney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was still writing my speech, actually, so I apologise if it sort of tails off towards the end. Now, I'd like to start off by apologising to the Lib Dem group, because unfortunately, due to certain complications, I haven't been given a great deal of choice in terms of how I vote on this issue. However, I do still have a degree of choice over what I say, and I have a great deal of sympathy for the administration's reasoning behind their decision. Council finances have been squeezed, and I do wonder whether the loss in revenues collected from these new parking charges might be put to use elsewhere, as Mark just alluded to. I'd also like to remind members that we are in a climate emergency. As I pointed out on the Climate Emergency Overview and Scrutiny Committee, a committee I look forward to returning to shortly, the borough is currently spending almost 10 times more money per tonne of CO2 on biodiversity than it is on transport. Now, protecting our borough's biodiversity is of course important, but ultimately, what is the point of protecting various species of bird if our residents continue to drive around in SUVs? At its peak, the Victoria Line can transport 10,000 passengers per hour in each direction. The average motorway lane can transport only 2,000, so it would require a 10-lane motorway to achieve the same efficiency as the Victoria Line. So that means even if the council achieves its ambitions of switching 1/3 of drivers over to electric vehicles, this simply cannot be the future of transport. However, I do appreciate the financial burden that this will have on families. So in the case of Woodley, I believe that we can kill two birds with one stone. This is where the speech starts to tail off. I am contacted regularly by residents who live near the Headley Road East industrial development about the issue of parking. The development is being built at the moment, lots of people are involved in that, and they park on the estate nearby. I believe that introducing parking charges in this area would raise about the same amount of revenue that you would get from Ashtonbury car park, which would solve the parking issue for the residents, because they could get residence permits, and it would also mean that we wouldn't need to introduce parking charges in Ashtonbury. I can't speak for Cantley, I can't speak for anywhere else, but I have a solution in the case of Woodley, so I would be open to having a conversation with somebody about this. Thank you very much. And just to be clear, I wholeheartedly support this petition, and I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Charles Margetts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of this petition tonight. As has been already commented, for the health and well-being of all our residents, it's vital they're encouraged to use all the sports and leisure facilities across the borough. As we approach summer at a time where some families find their costs stretched as never before, our facilities should be as open as possible for all. I think it would be the wrong signal to put in parking charges on Cantley, which could discourage their use. As has been commented already, a lot of the groups who use it rely heavily on volunteers and perform a vital function to the community. The council already makes money from hiring sports pitches and the cafe. There has to be a sensible point where we as members say stop. no more. This applies also to people using our leisure centres. If we want these resources to remain as accessible, there have to be as few barriers as possible to entry. There has to be a point where the resident is not simply there to have more and more money extracted from them. Introducing parking charges at country parks has some interesting parallels. It's generated revenue for the council, but it also has had negative consequences for neighbours. You'll find many people on the Manor Park Drive estate in Finch Hampstead who would argue that parking charges at California Country Park are a menace because the level of charges has led to lots of parking on the side roads and walking through to the country park because it's free. I also think it'd be wrong to introduce parking charges at village centres. Places like California Crossroads are convenience locations for people who want to use the local businesses for brief top-up shopping. They're not town centre locations with many shops, restaurants and a cinema. We should be supporting local business rather than trying to make its life harder. This especially applies to California Crossroads after local businesses saw much of their income during 2024 wiped out due to the redevelopment of the crossroads. I agree with what Councillor Ashwell said. There is a group in the community who do feel that there is an issue with parking too long by certain communities in that car park, but the answer is not to impose hourly charges. It's, as we've been calling for, to consult with the entire Finch Hampstead community, not just a small section of it, and come up with a solution that works for all. Generally, though, small local businesses need the council to stop adding extra charges and obstacles, have a climate of stability where they can prosper and get out of their way. I'm happy to support this motion and would encourage all members to send a strong signal to the wider community of their support long-term for accessible sport and leisure facilities and support for our small local traders.
Greg Bellow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to support this motion. Last year, Wokingham Borough Council launched a project to enhance one of our important green spaces in Woodley, Ashenbury Park. The project was to enrich natural habitats and create a biodiversity net gain. A green space providing local residents great health benefits in our urban setting. We are trying to encourage people to enjoy being active and take part in recreation and sports. Yet by the council considering introducing fees of car parking, we are undermining these efforts. It goes completely against encouraging people to enjoy their parks. Introducing fees for parking at Ashenbury Park is totally inappropriate when residents see the car park is rarely cleared up, with broken bottles, rubbish littering the area, and large potholes there resembling craters that could damage cars, which I've seen myself. How could we possibly charge residents for such a car park in a state of disrepair? While Wokingham Labour understands the financial pressures on the council, charging residents to access green spaces is the wrong approach. As the council, we should be doing all we can to encourage greater use of our green spaces by our residents. Thank you.
Lou Timlin, please.
Thank you. As a trained health economist, public health is something that I'm passionate about, particularly now when we face a growing obesity epidemic in the UK, and as we've heard, 28% of adults are now obese, a figure that has doubled in the last 30 years. Additionally, almost 27% of children are overweight or obese, and there is good data which links obesity prevalence in children with deprivation. As well as lost quality and length of life for those impacted, the NHS spends around £6.5 billion a year on obesity-related ill health. I therefore believe we need to ensure that sports and leisure facilities should remain as accessible as possible. There are many reasons why people will choose to use cars rather than public transport or active travel options to access sport and leisure facilities. They may face time constraints, or alternative options may not be available. I do not believe that we should be putting financial barriers in place which may discourage people, particularly those with lower incomes, from accessing sports and leisure facilities. Whilst the public health impact of introducing financial barriers for these facilities is unclear, there is no clear evidence, common sense would suggest that it is likely to be negative. Given we as a council have committed to becoming a marmot borough in order to reduce health inequalities, I would happily support a motion not to introduce car parking charges at sports and leisure facilities. However, Pragmatism forces me to accept that the future financial circumstances of the council may change, leading us to have to make difficult decisions, including decisions on car parking charges. I cannot therefore agree to support this motion.
Andrew Gray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A community centre, a cafe, an exhibition space, and most recently, a cinema. All of these are in our school green centre at the heart of Shinfield. It's a much used and much loved community centre that benefits so many people and has seen so much investment in recent years. If Woking Borough Council went ahead with plans to start charging residents to park in the car park of School Green, it will have an adverse impact on our community. Charges would cause people to abuse the local pub's car park and those who use the co-op and little stores, which would negatively affect local businesses, which are so vital to our village. Charges would increase the dangerous parking on roads, causing problems for the people who live around School Green. The roads around School Green are already a hotspot for awkward and dangerous parking, and introducing charges would only make this worse. Turning this free-to-use car park into a pay and display would be a huge hit to the community and a real backwards step in the hard work that the parish has done to build a vibrant community centre. So there has to be a better way of raising money than penalising people who want to support our communities. Thank you.
Peter Harper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was initially not going to speak on this item, but I was spurred into action by an email from a Finch Hampstead resident. He plays walking football at Cantley Park twice a week with the Woodley Pensioners Football Club. He's retired, and if charges were levied at Cantley Park, it would double the cost of his participation in this important exercise opportunity. Now, he originally joined this walking football club through the Shine scheme, which helped older residents take part in exercise and stay healthy. A doubling in cost will mean he and many others will cut back their participation in regular exercise to the detriment of his physical and mental health. Now, at a time when we have an obesity epidemic and increasing levels of mental health issues, we should make it easier for residents to participate in exercise, not harder. We should also be supporting local businesses. The Avery Corner car park is key to the success of shops and businesses surrounding the California Crossroads. Now, members will be pleased to know that I won't be using this as an opportunity to discuss the new junction. But we do know that the roadworks had a big impact on the local businesses. Keeping Avery Corner free will help these businesses to recover and thrive in the future. Now, whilst the imposition of parking charges would appear to be a low-impact, revenue-raising option, we need to consider the impact on the physical and mental health of our residents and the viability of our businesses. The negative impact of parking charges far outweighs the benefits to council finances, and we should rule out levying charges on these car parks indefinitely. Thank you.
Imogen Shepherd-Debay, please.
I cannot think that there's anyone in this room who wouldn't want us to be able to provide free car parking. Anybody? No? Okay. Particularly where we are supporting sport and leisure facilities. If our finances allow us to do so, I completely understand the desire and the preference to do just that. However, unlike from what I'm hearing from what some people have been saying this evening, for right now, there is absolutely no risk of charges being implemented in any of these car parks mentioned. And as our Chief Financial Officer states in his comments, there were no proposals for the years 25-26, and there isn't any in the plan for the next 2 years, and no income expectations. However, free car parks do have a cost for maintenance, and this petition is not suggesting a time limit. So I can only see that we forever intends us to prioritise free car parking over the needs of the elderly, the disabled, children in care and children with special educational needs. These are the main areas of financial pressures for this council and amount to around 70% of our budget. This petition is trying to force the council to keep these car parks free forever, no matter who is running this council, and suggests a commitment which could easily become exactly that, and which I have just suggested. As our budget pressures get tighter, we are going to have to take adult decisions and look at some of the less desirable choices. Exploring the feasibility of charging for these car parks is still a sensible and responsible thing for us to carry on with, and we should not be at the point of holding any future council to financial commitments that could be unreasonable. But gathering this information is still the sensible thing to do. Rest assured, adding parking fees to these car parks is certainly not something that the current administration is wanting to do, if we have a choice that does not affect those with the greatest needs. However, what the start of this exercise has done is highlight the need to engage more closely with the different users of these car parks and provide them with information in an open and transparent way going forward. We will be consulting with them and letting them suggest which options they agree would be preferable in order to keep things viable. It is certainly the kind of decision-making process I would prefer to see going forward. Thank you.
Joseph Barley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I understand why the current administration so wanting to put this focus on the fact that there's no current threats, but it's very difficult to take that with any ounce of trust, given that especially it was only a few years ago that their very own Member of Parliament was standing shoulder to shoulder with the residents of my ward campaigning against development at Hall Farm. But a bit like how Councillor Parker wasn't going to bang on about California Crossroads, I won't bang on about the local plan anymore. Now, my ward is in a fortunate position that we don't have any chargeable car parks within our borders. Now, despite this, it is residents very much like us who would be disproportionately effective if any administration of this council were to introduce them across Wokingham. Now, to paint a bit of a picture, the nearest bus stop to my house is a 25-minute walk down a narrow lane littered with potholes, flooding, and no pavement. Now, once I get to the bus stop, I better hope I timed leaving the house correctly, because the bus only comes once around every 50 minutes to an hour. Then when you're finally actually on the bus, it can take up to half an hour just to get into the town centre. Then even after all that, let's say I wanted to go up to, say, Cantley Park to go spend some time, well, that's about another 20-minute walk. All in all, I'll be spending over an hour and a half just to make my way there by public transport, and this is in comparison to the 20-minute car journey that makes a trip like this actually feasible on a regular basis. This is what residents all over the borough are faced with, and it's the only way we can commit ourselves to regular activities, whether that be dog walking, football, archery, or even just a weekly catch-up with some friends. Now, the looming threat of blanket charges across the borough may have been waived for the meantime, but it doesn't mean it won't happen again. And when it does, it's residents like us who are going to be hit the hardest, those living on the fringes of the borough. We have no shops, we have no parks, and no services accessible by active and public transport. We'll be forced to shell out what could be for some up to 4 figures a year in parking fees just because the council feels like it. Now, I will support this motion tonight in the hope that it's a chance for this council to for once actually listen to the residents and not just note their concerns like they do through their hollow consultations, but actually take some kind of action as well.
Yusra Salman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to tell you, first of all, I got so many emails from my residents to support this motion. I stand before you today to support Nagina Gela's motion, which seeks to support free parking for car parks that primarily serve sport and recreation spaces, including Ashenbury Park in Bulmarsh and Carnation Ward, Woodley. In this era of inflation, where prices for everything are rocket high, families are struggling to go on holidays abroad. For instance, our parks and our sports facilities are the nucleus and gateways for our communities. These spaces are the opportunities to maintain health and well-being without any financial constraints, including for our low-income families. It also echoing a wrong message that access to health is a privilege, not right. For taxpayers' residents also, this will become extra burden. The drawback of imposing car park charges has another wider impact. If parking fees drive people away from designated lots, eventually they will park in nearby residential streets, causing congestion and inconvenience for our residents. Wokingham Borough has a history of encouraging healthy and active lifestyles. Charging of parking at recreation sites contradicts that commitment. To have less impact on NHS, we should promote residents to use parks rather than penalizing them. I urge you all support this motion and keep our recreational spaces welcoming and free for everyone. Thank you.
Jackie Rance, please.
I'm speaking up for all the residents of Shinfield who use the small car park at School Green. It is an essential car park being situated 20 yards in any direction from the infant school, the parish council centre, the doctor's surgery, the dentist, the pharmacy, the care home, and possibly the most important, Crumb's coffee shop. It is also used extensively for after-school and evening classes. If there were charges applied, this would make life very difficult for all those who use the car park. It is impossible to gauge how long one is going to be in the doctor's, dentist's, pharmacy, or the school, because the reality of life is that we queue for everything these days. Therefore, people will be continually penalised by fines for overstaying when parking for just everyday things rather than going for a walk or shopping. Charging to park would be a disaster.
Thank you, councillors. That concludes the time we have allocated for the debate of this item. Nagy, you have a right to reply. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should begin with thanking everyone who are in support of this motion, and I'm sad, especially to listen to Mark Ashwell. It makes me really sad, and it still, especially being a football enthusiast, no, not happy with it. But again, yeah, going back to the petition, so it would be difficult for us to go back to thousands of people who have signed this petition. You could tell within a span of 48 hours, we have gathered to collect about 2,000 signatures, which is one of the fastest and quickest responses this borough would have ever seen in the past, or probably in the future as well. It would be difficult to explain to residents that the council thinks that during a cost of living crisis, they need to make an increased contribution to the club or group activity, either by paying for parking or by paying increased fees for using the car parks. Residents deserve better. We know the council is one of the lowest funded local authorities in the country. We know there are increased pressures, but until now, we have successfully managed not to ask residents to pay to play. We have encouraged them to be active, be healthy, and enjoy the great outdoors by keeping our green spaces free to park. If we start charging for car parking in these parks, we will regret it. We will regret seeing people unable to afford this extra fee and forced to turn down the opportunity to take part in sports, clubs, fitness groups, and exercise classes. We will regret the impact this will have on the borough's health and well-being. And we as councillors will have to admit this was one cost that we should have found a better solution for. I urge all councillors to listen to the residents who signed this petition and back them by voting to our motion. Thank you.
Hold on a second. First of all, Nagy, will you be moving the petition motion as set out in the supplementary agenda?
Yes, I would.
Please go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I just have a point of order, and I'm quoting 4.2.13.16. It's been suggested by a number of candidate councillors, including Councillor Shepherd-Debris, that this council would be bound by, in the future councils would be bound if we voted for this petition, and I don't believe that is the case. So can we have a factual answer on that from an officer? I don't believe the council would be bound, and the decision made here would bind future councils.
I'll take that point and take guidance. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. So, Andrew has advised that setting fees and charges is an executive function, not a council function. Therefore, in the context of this petition, this is the full council just being advisory rather than the executive which sets fees and charges.
So to confirm, I'm right, it is not binding on the council or future council. Thank you very much.
It is not binding, is the answer. Prue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion. I believe it's been circulated on the green pieces of paper. Yep.
Yes. Sorry. Sorry, can we... Sorry, I'm getting... sorry, I need a seconder for Nagy, first of all. Thank you, Rachel. Prue, thank you very much for the amendment. I need a seconder for the amendment. Thank you, Imogen. Right, has everybody seen the amendment? Has everybody got the amendment? Does anybody need an adjournment for the amendment? Or can we vote on the amendment?
Prue needs to speak. I'd like to make a speech on it,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. So Prue, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very short amendment, and it basically says that the council notes that in future years we will have to consider the financial situation when we look at free car parks. And that sums up the Liberal Democrat position, which is the only position that any administration could sensibly and responsibly take. That position is that however much we might want to, we cannot agree to an open-ended commitment to funding free parking, or indeed anything else, in perpetuity. How could we when we don't know what the future is going to bring with regard to either our income or the demands on spending on statutory and other services? Now, I heard the point that Dave Edmonds made. However, this is not about whether the council can technically be held to this motion. It's about what the public will perceive us to have done. And if we vote for an open-ended commitment, they will expect us to carry out that commitment. And that is not fair to the public when we know that we are not going to be in a position to do that. There are no plans for any of the free car parks this year. However, we have very little idea what will happen with regard to council finances past this year. We don't know what our 3-year government settlement will be. We don't know exactly what inflation is going to do, what the local government pay increase will be. We don't know what's going to happen to SEND funding. We don't know what the pressures will be on adult social care placements, and so on and so on. And it is completely unrealistic to propose that free parking must be preserved, regardless of what else may happen in the future. And I think the most we can do now is indicate that we support the principles in the motion. So please vote to amend the motion, and once it is amended, we can all vote for it.
Imogen, as a seconder, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. I won't repeat everything that has been said before. We'd all very much like to have free car parking when we can, and we can commit to the idea in principle. However, I cannot commit this council to that forever, because none of us, as Prue has suggested, can predict the financial circumstances this council has in years to come. And in terms of Dave's words, he is correct. This is a discussion, but it's about public perception. And we can commit to, the principle of free car parking. And there was never, and I almost apologise to the public because there was never, we haven't got as far as suggesting it at all, or it was never on the table. We need to be realistic, as it costs money to maintain these car parks. There was no proposal for car parking. It was an investigation, the officers were looking at it. We need to be realistic, as it costs money to maintain these car parks. And if we are supporting free car parks, means taking money away from our statutory services, which includes looking after the elderly, disabled, children in care, then no, I cannot possibly agree on that being right. Which is why I'm happy to support the amendment, as Prue suggests, and is being the most sensible and reasonable thing for any reasonable human being to commit to. Thank you.
Nagy, as the proposer, you have the right to reply now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank the councillors for suggesting this amendment, and I'm sure they realise it is not one of the, I should say this part of the groups. Yeah, so we are not happy with the amendment, but the thing is, with the recent changes and other things which we discussed a few minutes ago, just to clarify for Imogen, so on the November 12th in the Corporate and Community Scrutiny Committee, this has been discussed. And again, there is a question that's been raised in January full council meeting as well. So I suggest you going back to review it. And again, in terms of this particular petition...
Can I make a point of personal explanation? It was not in the budget. It's never been in the budget for charging for car parks. It is not in the budget, therefore it's not on the table.
It is? Sorry. Okay. That's fine. Okay, going back to the petition. So in terms of the petition, it is very clear. The residents loudly and clearly said they do not think they should be asked to pay to park while taking part in leisure activities. We know there are severe pressures on the council's finances and the need to balance the budget. We know that savings have to be made and new revenue sources need to be found, but this is not the way to do it. We will not support an amendment that ignores what residents have told this chamber very loudly and clearly. How can we look our residents in the eye and tell them we are not imposing car parking charges this year, but we might next year? It completely ignores their wishes. This is not what we are elected to do. I urge the council to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, now we need to move to the vote to a vote on the amendment. All of those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Have you got the numbers? You can put your hands down, thank you. All those against, please raise your hand. The amendment is carried. Therefore, we move on to...
That's the council's response.
Sorry.
That's the council's response to the petition.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. It's carried.
It's done. So that's it.
Yes.
That is the substantive, and it's all done.
Yeah.
So that's
The
it.
amendment is...
Okay. So next piece of business. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to the local transport plan. I understand Councillor Martin Alder is proposing this report. Is that correct? Are you there?
Yes, it is
Thank
me.
you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Mr. Betteridge. Would you like to go ahead, please, Martin?
Right. So the local transport plan is presented this evening with details, policies and actions to enable and support the implementation of the transport schemes, programmes and promotions as part of a considered strategic plan for transport within our borough. It reflects changing travel trends and includes a greater focus on the climate emergency which the Borough Council declared back in 2019. The LTP has been widely consulted on with the public at both the early stages and later again when the draft was reviewed before the final version was produced. It takes into consideration all the Council's strategic documents and plans to ensure that the actions align with our overall plan and vision. This has involved significant internal consultation and work across all directorates to ensure this strategic alignment. It supports our local priorities, including a prosperous economy, improving the quality of life for residents, reducing the environmental impact of transport, and the first stages in the transition of the transport sector towards lower carbon emissions and net zero. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Does any member wish to speak against this report? Okay, thank you. Marie, would you like to go ahead, please?
Thank you very much. It's quite hard to actually when I sat down to think how we were going to approach this, it's quite hard to take issue with anything in this document, our local travel plan, and that's because it really doesn't say all that much. It is full of vague, feel-good platitudes that no one could disagree with, yeah? Everybody wants better public transport. Everybody wants, more integration. But I would urge us to sort of compare that with Councillor Barney's apocalyptic journey to Cantley as an expression of how the reality of local transport in our borough is not actually reflected in this plan. This plan lacks, in particular, I know it's a statutory requirement and I know it's top level, but if you look at the reality of how people experience public transport here in this borough, the core issue is again and again that transport infrastructure is delivered well after housing, if at all. Yeah? That houses are built and the transport, the public transport particularly, lags, and in some cases, in the case of my own ward, never appears at all. We have developments with ghost bus stops out of which a bus has never and probably will never land. This has a severe impact on the existing transport infrastructure. It has a severe impact on the behaviour of people coming into the new housing, because without that immediate ability to engage with it, to use public transport, people just don't, move beyond their existing, car-based modality. And it also contributes to the lack of support for improving local transport, a lack of support and a lack of engagement, which I think is demonstrated by the, crushingly low rates of engagement that took place in this consultation. So although we recognise the necessity of having a plan and its nature as a statutory requirement, we will be abstaining on this vote, because we want to underline the importance of a strong, and a strong plan of action which actually engages with the reality that people face. Thank you.
Councillor Adrian Batteridge, do you wish to speak first or reserve your right?
I'd like to reserve my right, please.
Thank you, Councillor. So, yeah, we need to ask if there's anybody else who wants to speak. Yeah. Does anybody else wish to speak on this motion, on this transport plan? Sorry. Caroline, is that it? Okay. Off you go, Caroline.
Thank you. Many thanks for the opportunity to talk about this important document, the local plan. This is a statutory requirement, thus making it important that it passes tonight. The transport plan has been through much consultation and also through overview and scrutiny. This plan started back in autumn 2022 and is much aligned with our Community Vision 2035. We all have this document in front of us which outlines the priorities of the plan, and we all have our own interests and agendas. Many of my colleagues will welcome the increase in safe cycle routes, with more coming in the local plan. But for me, an important feature is the accessibility of public transport, looking particularly at the bus improvement plan, which aims to increase bus trips. And as I get older, and maybe sometime in the future, I will be unable to drive, and therefore will rely on public transport for all my needs. Also, I do appreciate my bus pass now, and I'm pleased that we have improved accessibility for disabled people by reducing travel restrictions on travel cards, helping more of our residents to travel around our borough. As a parent and a grandparent, travel around our schools can be an issue. This plan is tackling this problem with promoting the use of sustainable travel, and will try to find capital funding projects around the schools to improve safety around them. Also looking to find suitable location for school streets, and there is one example in Crescent Road in Reading. Those are just two of the areas I have touched on, which are important to me, a typical older residents living in Early. But we all know, talking to our residents, that we all have differing needs, and this local transport plan will ensure that all our residents are catered for in the long term. Thank you.
Adrian Betteridge, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm seconding this motion. High quality local transport is vital to everybody, for business, for commuting, for education, and just for day-to-day living and leisure. This plan is a product of more than 2 years of analysis and consultation. I was pleased to have been consulted early on in its gestation as a public representative of the active travel community. As councillors, we all know that transport matters to our constituents, and it can be deeply personal. There were almost 500 people responding to this consultation. We would have liked a lot more, but as we know, it's hard to get answers from people. The public consultation ran online, paper copies were available, there were public events, and interest groups were consulted directly. Only 488 people chose to reply, but they did overwhelmingly support the three themes of creating healthy and safe places, supporting the development of the economy, and reducing the environmental impact of travel. They also supported the detailed proposed objectives in the draft plan. Even the least popular objective had support of over 50%, and only 30% were opposed. The plan before us was then developed taking into account the feedback. Other emerging council plans, it now has 9 objectives and 61 specific actions to be delivered, including a significant focus on growing public transport. It attends to the differing characteristics of the borough and the differing needs of different individuals. I'm particularly pleased to see that the final plan now includes the principles of Vision Zero, a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries, whilst increasing safe, healthy and equitable mobility for all. Our area sees fewer people hurt travelling than many, but even so, almost 200 people a year are killed or seriously injured in the borough. We can and we must do better. Many of the actions here are already being delivered by this forward-thinking administration. For example, innovating to prolong the life of assets, removing restrictions on concessionary travel, and enabling more sustainable modes of travel. To keep our roads flowing, we will need to continue to ensure that developers do provide local facilities that meet people's needs without them having to travel long distances, and that people have a range of options for travelling, not just the private car. But most importantly, with this plan, we have a clear vision and a to-do list. This will give us better access to government funding, as we've seen recently in the bus service improvement and active travel funding. And we have the ability to build a transport system fit for the future. And I did hope that everybody would support this. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to a vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the report, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against, please. Abstentions? Thank you. The report is, recommendations are carried. Now we move to the annual audit report. I understand Councillor Rachel Burgess is proposing this report, is that correct? Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. Rachel, would you like to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the annual report of the Audit Committee. We've had a productive year overseeing the Council's governance arrangements, gaining assurance on internal controls and effective risk management, and overseeing the work of internal audit. However, the year has not been without its challenges. In overseeing the work of external audit, like many audit committees across the country, we have faced challenges due to the local government audit backlog and the government's backstop arrangements. However, one of the committee's strengths is its balanced, objective and genuinely non-political approach. Members have contributed thoughtfully and constructively to our discussions, ensuring that we support the highest standards of governance. This year, we were also really fortunate to have 2 members of the public serve on the committee, reinforcing our independence, but also boosting our expertise. Our work is well supported by several officers, including the Chief Executive, and their regular engagement ensures that we have the assurance needed to fulfil our responsibilities effectively. That said, the Audit Committee is not complacent and we're committed to continuous improvement. We welcome feedback from members of the public, from elected members and other stakeholders in order to strengthen our impact. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the officers who've supported the committee so well this year, to both the internal and external auditors, and of course to the members of the committee for their commitment and their valuable contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Does any member wish to speak against the report? Okay. We now move to a vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the report, please raise your hand. Thank you. Please put your hands down. Abstentions? Those against? Thank you very much. The recommendations are carried. Now we move to the annual report and overview and scrutiny management committee. I understand Councillor Catherine Glover is proposing that this report. Is that correct? Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mark. Catherine, do you want to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the reports of the Overview and Scrutiny Committees. This year, we've been making more of an effort on the overview side of our remit, helping to develop policies by providing input at an earlier stage in their evolution. Every committee has had its highlights, too numerous to mention now, but I'm sure you all already have, and if you haven't, you can read about them in the reports. I would like to thank the officers, residents, community groups, external experts, and all the councillors, members of the committees, substitutes and executive members who contributed their time, effort and insights to working in Borough Council's overview and scrutiny during the year.
Thank you, Catherine. Does any member wish to speak against this report? Thank you. We now move to a vote on this item. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Put your hands down, please. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. The report and recommendations are carried. Thank you. Now we move to reports from members appointed to outside bodies. I understand Councillor Stephen Conway is proposing this report. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Prue. Stephen, would you like to speak to the report?
I don't really think there's anything I need to say. Thank you.
Does any member wish to speak against the report? If not, then we move to a vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendations as put out in the report, please raise your hand. Thank you. Put your hands down, thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? That's carried. So the recommendations are carried on that report. Now we move on to the annual report on the Standards Committee. I understand Councillor Beth Rowland is proposing this report. Is that correct, Beth?
Yes, it is, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do you have a seconder? Caroline, thank you. Beth, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to present the report of the Standards Committee for 24-25. The main aim of the Standards Committee is to promote and maintain the highest standards of conduct by elected members representing the borough, town and parish councils. Maintaining ethical standards is the first principle of the Council's Code of Corporate Governance. Local government impacts the lives of every day, providing essential services to those it serves. High standards are required from all elected members in order to demonstrate that key decisions are taken in the public interest and to maintain public confidence in elected members and officers. Doing things in the right way and in the public interest is critical for public confidence in the bodies that operate on the public's behalf and support the delivery of essential public services. Council conduct is underpinned by the ethical standards summarised in the 7 principles of public life. We talk about them as the Nolan principles: selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. These principles are the basis of the ethical standards expected of public office holders. The Borough Council's Code of Conduct specifically references these principles as a foundation to the expectations for elected representatives' conduct. The Standards Committee met 3 times during the year and focused on ensuring that the Borough's Council's policies, as set out in the Council Code of Conduct, were up to date, understood, and underpinned by best practice. Bearing in mind the significant ongoing challenges facing the Borough and Town and Parish Councils over the year, I'm pleased to report that the volume of Code of Conduct complaint activity in the year 24-25, 12 complaints, remained at a relatively low level and compared favourably with 23-24, where we had 19 complaints, with only 1 resulting in a finding of a breach. The committee also noted the Council's response to the government consultation on proposed changes to the standards framework. The details of the individual executive decision can be found in the agenda for the executive IMDs on Wednesday, the 12th of February 2025. The work of the Standards Committee is supported by an independent person who, as the name suggests, provides an independent perspective on the Borough Council's monitoring officer in relation to Code of Conduct complaints. We will shortly be advertising for additional independent people or persons to add to this pool of members of the public to support the complaints process.
Beth, can you wrap up, please?
Yes. Finally, I would like to record my thanks to the Borough, Town and Parish Councillors, the independent person who is Paddy Haycox, and officers who contributed to the work of the committee over the year. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Beth. Does any member wish to speak against this report? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the report, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. I think that's unanimous. The recommendations are carried. Thank you. We now move on to Councillor question time. What is the time? There are 30 minutes for this. I would further like to remind all members that supplementary questions must either relate to the original question or the response that is given to that question and must be no longer than 1 minute. I would like to remind exec members that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. I believe tonight we have 13 councillor questions. Councillor Betteridge, please will you put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After too many years of delay, work is now underway at pace on community facilities in the Arborfield SDL, serving Arborfield Green, Finchwood Park and the neighbouring housing. With additional large-scale development coming, what lessons can be learned from the situation in Arborfield that can help with more timely provision in the future?
Thank you for your question, Adrian. You're correct in saying that it has taken a long time for some of the infrastructure, the district centre, for example, to be delivered in Arborfield SDL. But I'm pleased to say that in the last couple of years, we've seen a great deal of progress and much needed facilities are now coming forward. We must, however, I think also in fairness, recognise that some infrastructure arrived early or in good time to serve the community as it began to develop. It's particularly pleasing to note that the local community continues to play an important role in shaping what comes forward, as it is doing with the new community building. I should also like to thank our officers in the SDL team for their hard work. In terms of new development sites coming forward in the local plan update, recently submitted for examination, we will be reviewing our approach to look at the opportunities that there are to provide infrastructure in a timely manner, speaking with other councils to see whether any lessons can be learnt from their experiences. And in some circumstances, that may mean early direct delivery by the developer rather than by the council through SIL or community infrastructure levy payments. I hope that helps.
Adrian, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. The Loddon Garden Village development is now picking up pace. What steps can be taken at this early stage to ensure that the right infrastructure is delivered and in a timely manner?
Thanks very much, Adrian, for that supplementary question. On the Loddon Valley Garden Village, or Hall Farm, as it's commonly known, we successfully negotiated a reduction in the number of dwellings there as compared with in the draft local plan, but we have secured all of the necessary infrastructure in our agreements with the developers. The details of all that will obviously have to be worked through when we get formal planning applications. But our aim is, as I indicated in my answer to your first question, to try and ensure that we can deliver infrastructure in a more timely manner than has always been the case in the past. And I think what we'll be aiming to do, as I indicated, in the case of the Hall Farm site in particular, we'll be exploring how much it's feasible to expect developers to provide the infrastructure at an early stage through tightly worded 106 agreements, rather than rely as heavily as we've often done in the past on community infrastructure levy, which has meant the councils had to provide the infrastructure themselves. So we're trying to approach this in a rather different way from the large strategic development location sites of the past. I hope that helps.
Shona Turtle, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. Development of the South Relief Road is now underway. Could you advise me of any potential plans to improve the environment in Wokingham Town Centre when the road is open?
Thank you, Shona, for your question. The Council's local transport plan is written around the key themes of creating healthy and safe places, developing the economy and reducing environmental impacts. Because of this, a lot of the action plan is based on various measures to improve the environment, including the delivery of our bus service improvement plan and the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and the promotion of sustainable and active travel via our award-winning My Journey team, which will benefit the whole borough. We have committed to adopting the Healthy Streets approach to all of our schemes, which means we will consider the 10 Healthy Streets indicators in any future scheme to be delivered. For Wokingham Town Centre specifically, the Town Centre Master Plan, part of our core strategy adopted in 2010, remains our guiding document, which this calls for further public realm improvements. This included the marketplace and the wider town regeneration. The opening of the SWDR would also enable traffic to be redirected and avoid the town centre during any further improvements to the town centre, which are yet to be identified. A relatively simple environment improvement could be a signing strategy that could encourage traffic to be directed around the town to reduce the flows travelling through the centre. However, any future plan within the town would be subject to funding and the availability of funding, and we would generally depend on grants and developer contributions to deliver schemes. Once the local transport plan is adopted, there will be further discussion around the prioritisation of projects across the borough. There is currently an air quality management area within Workham Town Centre. The Council's Environment and Safety team are currently updating the Air Quality Action Plan, with a prioritised focus on Workham Town Centre. This will help to also establish any further environmental improvements within the town.
Shona, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Thank you for that answer. Assuming that the Southern Relief Road does reduce the flow of traffic through the town, other historic market towns similar to Wokingham have considered pedestrianisation and tree planting in the town centres to improve the environment and the experience for visitors. Is this something you might consider?
Shona, I'm afraid it's a new one, and I would be it'd be remiss of me to try and bat that away impromptu here, but I will come up with an answer. But it does sound a very nice vision.
Right, next, can we have Sam Akhtar, please?
Thank you very much. My question is, within the last 6 months, the council voted for section 19 of the new local plan.
We can't hear you, unfortunately, Sam. Can we move on to Rebecca Margetts, please?
Mr. Mayor, I mean, can we take it that Sam's question is as he presented it, and I'm very happy to answer it. It's going to be a bit of a challenge with a supplementary, I fear, but we can try if the Teams is up to it. You're all familiar with, I hope, Sam's question, which was published in the agenda, so I won't read that out. I'm sorry you can't be here, Sam, and ask your supplementary, but thanks for your question. I think I need to correct a few points in your question before attempting to answer it. Yes, the new plan, now submitted under the transitional arrangements which enable us to proceed on the housing need calculation of 748 new homes a year, identifies Loddon Valley Hall Farm as the principal development site. But during the debate on the approval of the local plan, reference was made to 2 other possible major development sites, one in Ruscombe, not Remenham, and one in Hurst, which were promoted by developers but not included in the plan after they had been rigorously appraised on policy and deliverability grounds by our officers. I should also point out that the new number, which we will be expected to deliver in the plan after the one now at the Planning Inspectorate, is currently 1,336 new dwellings a year, not 1,308. You are right to suggest that there are major practical obstacles to delivering housing in this quantity and at the pace that the government expects. Based on current promotions, there is a shortage of available land, and it must be doubted whether the construction industry can scale up to meet the government's aspirations. Labour and material shortages are already evident, and these will only increase as many councils are obliged to give permissions for greater scale of development than has been the case previously.
Sam, if you are there, apparently an adjustment has been made. Can you try and ask a supplementary if you have one? Do you want to speak, Sam? I'm sorry, Sam, we just can't hear you. I'll move on to Rebecca Margetts, please.
Thank you. My question is to the Executive Member for Environment and Climate Change, Jordan Montgomery. In November 2023, Woking Borough Council received White Ribbon accreditation as part of a strategy to reduce violence against women and girls. A 3-year action plan was implemented and a steering group was established to drive the project. Could you please advise on the practical differences this has made to the lives of women and girls in Woking Borough 16 months into this action plan?
Rebecca, forgive me, but as you can see, Jordan's not well. He was not well at the last council meeting, which is very evident. So I will be answering the question on his behalf. The council sought white ribbon accreditation in November 2023. We produced a 3-year action plan within 6 months of receiving accreditation. Our plan was approved in July 2024. Only the first year of the action plan has been implemented, which focuses on preparatory work on policy, training and communications. The intention is that the bulk of the practical differences that you allude to will become apparent in years 2 and 3. Even so, there are some important points to make about what has been achieved this past year. The domestic abuse strategy has progressed through scrutiny and the Wellbeing Board and will be going to the executive in the spring. The Wokingham Community Safety Partnership ran a How to Stay Safe online campaign in February, which sought to raise awareness around romance, fraud, sextortion and other online threats. The Thames Valley Police and our licensing officers have recently visited licensed premises to increase awareness of the Ask for Angela campaign and the offer of training for venue staff. We have joined the Safer Students Partnership with Reading Community Safety Partnership, Thames Valley Police and other partners to help support students from Reading University and colleges to stay safe, particularly as they engage with the nighttime economy. We are arranging a series of walk and talks with the public where women can raise issues of concern, including identifying locations where they feel unsafe or vulnerable. And this is being led by the Thames Valley Police in conjunction with partner organisations such as ourselves. And there is work going on in local schools to challenge misogynistic attitudes.
Thank you. Rebecca, do you have a supplementary, please?
I do. Thank you, Stephen, for your update. Obviously, sorry to see that you're ill, Jordan. But obviously, as the exec member for this portfolio, it would be good to hear from you. I remain concerned, Stephen, about the lack of measurable outcomes associated with this strategy. When the White Ribbon strategy was launched back in 2023, Conservative members expressed these concerns. I remember Laura clearly commenting on this. So, for example, I've been waiting for the last 3 weeks for answers regarding why the Conservative group was not invited to the steering group. I've also been asking for the terms of reference for the group and the minutes from the previous meetings because we would like to be updated and would like to be involved. I've still not received a response and this is over 3 weeks now. So could the lead member, I was obviously going to ask Jordan, provide an update on this and let me know when I will receive an answer?
I will try and ensure you receive an answer as soon as possible.
Thank you. Martijn Andrea, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question for the Executive Member of Children's Services. The money that funds education comes from the government in the form of the dedicated school grant, known as the DSG. In Wokingham, the DSG has been running at a deficit for at least the last 4 years. And I want to ask, what are the reasons behind this?
Thank you for your question. To summarise the causes, Wokingham has experienced rapid growth in education, health and care plans since the 2014 SEND reforms. EHCP numbers have increased by 75% since 2021. This is still continuing. Despite this rapid growth, Wokingham's overall percentage of pupils with EHC plans, which is 4.2% in 2024, remains below the national average of 4.8%. The local SEND system's capacity has not matched this growing demand. Wokingham's lower than average provision in state special schools and academies has resulted in heavy reliance on costly independent and non-maintained special schools and alternative provision, without necessarily yielding better outcomes. Additionally, Wokingham ranks among the lowest funded education authorities in England. further constraining local mainstream schools' ability to provide early SEND support, which in turn perpetuates a downward cycle of over-reliance on expensive services. The actual attainment of SEND children in Woking Borough's local schools is significantly better than the national average and similar local authority areas. So a big factor is that we do not historically have sufficient local SEND provision. We've already increased local state provision, both special schools and units in mainstream, and we are continuing to do that. And it may be of interest that the average cost difference between a maintained special school and independent and non-maintained special schools is about £44,000 per placement per year.
Martijn, do you have a supplementary?
I have. Thank you, Prue. So since 2020, the central government has allowed all local authorities to exclude dedicated school grounds deficits from their balance sheets as part of a statutory override, which is due to expire in March 2026. Dedicated school ground deficits at national level at all councils combined in the UK run now into several billions of pounds. What would happen if the statutory override were to be removed?
Fairly big disaster. We would not fall over immediately as a council, but the weight of that money, servicing the debt is already bad enough. It's costing us something like £2 million a year to service the debt we've already got. The impact on local government would be so huge, I cannot believe that the government would let it happen, because the accumulated deficit will be bigger by the time we got to about 2030 than most councils' actual income. So it would be no good at all to allow that to happen. We do urgently need a complete overhaul of SEND funding. The government's indicated it's going to do that, and we await to see what their proposals are. If they don't reform it, then removing the override would not be a very pleasant experience for anybody.
Councillor Nagi Nagella, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Executive Member for Resident Services, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty. During the holy month of Ramadan, many Muslim residents are struggling to find appropriate spaces for prayers, particularly for Taraweeh and daily congregational prayers. Given the limited availability of spaces, can the Council explore provisions to support the community, such as making public buildings or community centres available for use during this period? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Nagi. The Council is committed to supporting all members of our community. During Ramadan, many Muslims want to pray and break their fast as a religious community every evening. Before the start of Ramadan this year, Councillors Basit Alvi, Imogen Shepherd-Dubey and I all explored a number of options to support our local prayer groups to find spaces for this. The challenges we found is that council and private communal spaces are limited and most evenings are booked up all round the year. The council owns a number of buildings which are available for public hire. Most council buildings which aren't actively used for council services are operated by our partners such as town and parish councils and community organisations. At least one of these is already hired regularly by a Muslim prayer group. Woking Borough Council's website has a list of venues operated by our partners with links and contact details. We encourage all those who would like to book a space to contact the venues directly. Places Leisure may also be able to hire out some of their facilities, and I would recommend contacting them directly to check availability. I'm very conscious as I say this that finding a suitable space which is available every evening is a challenge. We occasionally have buildings which are leased to or managed by community groups on a much longer term basis. Demand for these spaces is much greater than supply. Where space becomes available, the officers manage a fair tendering process. We ask all organisations which are interested in an arrangement of this kind to register their interest with the council property team, and Naji, the council officers, will pass you the details for this after this meeting. We are now nearing the end of Ramadan for 2025, but it would be good to continue this discussion to see if we can find a solution for 2026. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Nagi? No. The next is Andrew Gray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. The proposed demolition and redevelopment of the Shire Hall site in Shinfield has been a concern for residents in my ward, in particular with the potential for increased traffic along the B3270. The junction between Whitley Wood Lane and the B3270 is notoriously dangerous junction, an issue that Shinfield Parish and Whitley councillors in Reading have been searching for a solution to. If the redevelopment of the site goes ahead, and can the council commit to the use of developer contributions to improve this junction and take the important opportunity to work with our partners in Shinfield Parish Council and Reading Borough Council to make this road safer for residents?
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. We are aware of the concerns you raised about the safety of the junction between the B3270 and Whitley Wood Lane, and we've reported on this previously. Sorry, tongue-tied. Our evidence, which is based on personal injury accidents, does not identify this location as a priority with regard to safety. Speed data also indicates that there is a good compliance with the posted speed limit. However, we have previously identified some improvements at the junction and have worked with Reading to resolve some of these issues, particularly the clearance of vegetation to improve visibility. The planning application for Shire Hall is a live application which we are unable to comment on at this time. The scheme and any transport impacts resulting from the Shire Hall proposals will be assessed during the planning process. Should any mitigation measures be identified at any location directly related to the scheme proposal, appropriate measures would be presented and considered at that time in line with the national planning requirements.
Andrew, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that response. I know it is something, similar things that I've brought up in here before. And I know it is an ongoing application which needs to be worked on, and we need to see the sort of what happens with that first. But would you be willing to meet with me and Shinfield Parish members, should that application have gone through, to actually take that forward if that opportunity arises?
Andrew, I'll consult to make sure I don't make any procedural errors, because I know that the whole planning process is really fraught for accidentally putting a foot in it, so to speak. So I will consult, and if it's possible, I'll let you know either way, and I will organise what we can do.
Dave Edmonds, please.
My question's for the Executive Member for Children's Services, Prue Bray. According to research, approximately 1 in 200 girls and 1 in 12 boys are colourblind. What is this council doing to help identify children who are colourblind, and then ensuring that this is factored into their education to ensure they have the best possible experience at school?
Thank you for your question. Schools are responsible for responding to the individual needs of pupils in their community. And this includes making reasonable adjustments to enable pupils to be successful in their education. This duty derives from the school's responsibility to respond to the needs of the child as part of the Special Educational Needs Code of Practice of 2015. Furthermore, colour vision deficiency can take many medical forms, and only some diagnoses are recognised as impacting on visual acuity, and therefore bringing the person under the protection of the Equalities Act 2010. Schools are responsible for responding to the needs of any person falling under the protection of the Equalities Act definitions. If you know of a child who you believe is not having their needs met due to the way their colour blindness is being handled by a school, please let me know outside this meeting, and I will see if there's anything the council can do to assist.
Dave, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. The situation, I think, is that a number of children are going to be not identified as being colourblind that are in our schools. And when we're talking, particularly for boys, 1 in 12, that's 2 or 3 every class that are going to be statistically colourblind. I think this is a really big issue. And the fact is, the solution is very cheap. While schools can't diagnose, the test for colour blindness can be done in less than 1 minute. It's incredibly cheap. It's incredibly easy to achieve. It can be done quickly, simply. It's a good win here for us. We can make a difference to people's lives. So I would like an undertaking that the council will investigate putting a free scheme together to achieve this.
I'm happy to investigate it. I do have to point out that the majority of our schools now are academies, and therefore we would not be able to go in and interfere in their school. That doesn't mean to say that if there is something that we can find that doesn't cost anything, that we shouldn't try and persuade them. I'm happy to look into it.
Joseph Barley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's for the Executive Member for Environment and Climate Emergency, but I understand I'll be directing it towards the Leader of the Council. Now, over recent time, as Arborfield has grown, WBC's attention to detail in the village does seem to have plummeted. Every day I see mud scattered all the way up the road, and towards the verges, rubbish has been left for so long that the flora has begun to grow around the waste. Now, residents have vocalised these issues for a while, and there have been several accusations of developers not appropriately wheel-washing vehicles, and meanwhile there have also been claims that the source of the litter on the road are also from these very vehicles. Now, because of this administration's commitment to making Wokingham messier through cutting rubbish collections and street sweeping, I've decided to act by pressing the ASB and Arborfield Green SDO enforcement teams to investigate these issues, as it has created a genuine eyesore in what was previously a litter-free village, and ultimately prevention is better than cure. Now, despite my efforts, at the time of submitting my question, I was yet to receive a response to any of my emails, and whilst I have now, things are still moving painfully slowly. Given this lack of action, I would like to ask the Leader of the Council if he will take the necessary steps for his administration to clean up Arborfield and work with enforcement to investigate the sources of mess and litter that this council has allowed to reign free for so long now.
Thank you for your question, Joseph. I know that one of your ward colleagues, Adrian Betteridge, has already been active in addressing some of the points you raise. He has met with the site director of Crest Nicholson to discuss the impact of construction traffic and has been liaising with our ASB and Cleaner and Greener teams to address particular concerns about littering and fly tipping. Our officers have been working with the developer regarding the reports of muddy roads. The developer has a responsibility to comply with the conditions of the planning consent, which includes vehicle wheel washing at site entrances. Officers are actively monitoring this via regular site visits to ensure that these measures continue to be applied effectively. Road sweeping around the STL is being undertaken as expected, and it is the developer's responsibility to clear any detritus which is on the roadways or footpaths. In terms of litter, the council undertakes litter picks and empties the adopted litter bins around Arborfield on a regular basis. In light of the concerns raised, we will enhance our monitoring. I should add that the annual National Spring Clean will take place this coming Sunday, and it has strong community support, and of course there is an opportunity for you and all other councillors to get involved. Adopt a Street volunteers donate their time to help keep the area clean, and we are very grateful for their support and assistance. We will be liaising with the developers for some support with the A327 clearance, and we expect this to be undertaken within the next few months.
That's the end of member question time. Now we move on to minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. Can I invite members to put their hands up for questions on committee meetings and ward matters? Can keep them up for quite a few minutes while we get a list put together. Okay, you can put your hands down, thanks. So we will start with... who's Jason Barley? Joseph Barley. Joseph Barley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back down, straight back up. Now, within my ward, as I have mentioned, that there have been commercial sources of rubbish that has been a key concern for residents, but these aren't the only sources of litter-related issues that we face. Since I was elected, I've noticed both on my travels and through reports by residents that there's been a dramatic increase in household waste being littered throughout the village, mainly by being left next to public bins. Now, will the leader of the council concede that a lot of this litter that has created an eyesore in Arborfield is, at the very least, not entirely, but at the very least, partly caused by his administration's policy to slash bin collections in half last year?
No, I wouldn't acknowledge that at all. But I'm glad you've got the chance to ask your supplementary. I was slightly disappointed that you were cut off in midstream. But no, I'm afraid I can't agree with you on that, Joseph. I hope you would join me in saying that it is totally unacceptable for household waste to be dumped near rubbish bins in anywhere in the borough, not just in your own ward.
Catherine Glover, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When an S106 agreement is signed, it forms a legal contract between developers and Wokingham Borough Council and often includes defined triggers or restrictions on infrastructure delivery. Sorry, I should have said this is for the Executive Member for Planning and the Local Plan. An example of this is the S106 agreement for the Spencer's Wood 3 Mile Cross development in the south of M4 SDL, signed on the 22nd of July 2014, which states that the developer's covenant with the council not to occupy more than 100 dwellings on the 3 Mile Cross land and not to occupy more than 150 dwellings on the Spencer's Wood land until Basingstoke Road and Church Lane junction works have been completed to stage 3 road safety audit stage. Since the following apply, it is nearly 11 years since the signing and both these covenant restrictions have long been exceeded. The junction works have still not begun, let alone been completed, despite forming part of the original drawings that were published in 2012 and contractors formally being appointed on at least one occasion. It is stated in the currently submitted LPU that development in the south of the M4 SDL is almost complete. The question is, are there formal deeds of variation existing for each and every deferment of the completion restriction? Are they available for public scrutiny, and what public consultation was undertaken with each and every deferment of the completion restrictions?
A very good question, to which I don't have an answer at this stage. It's an incredibly detailed question, and if you can give me a copy of it, I will make sure I get you an answer to this very specific points you raised. Thank you. But you clearly are addressing a general point that we've already touched upon this evening in Adrian's formal written question about the timely delivery of infrastructure. So this is very pertinent to that discussion. Not quite sure what that was. It was a little bit background noise. So I will try and get you an answer to this detailed set of questions.
Charles Margetts, please.
Thank you. It was a question for Jordan, I'm afraid, but I'm happy for you to answer it, Stephen, if you prefer, though specialist knowledge of the area might help. And I mean that with no disrespect. Finch Hampstead this year, myself, Peter and Rebecca have been contacted by a lot of people with big problems with drainage and flooding, particularly on 9 Mile Ride and Barkham Ride. 3 in particular have been very bad. Now, in fairness to the officers who were involved, they've been very helpful about trying to respond to this and resolve it, which I appreciate, though 2 of the 3 still remain completely unresolved. However, one of the officers did say to me the big problem which is causing all of this is drainage inspections were cut from once every 6 months to 12 months. There's now a huge backlog of maintenance basically that needs doing, and this particular officer is having to arrange CCTV surveys of all of 9 Mile Ride's drains, probably about 8 or 9 miles, and Barkham Ride probably about 3 or 4 miles before even any work can be planned. Now, this is obviously highly unsatisfactory. I've got one resident whose garden gets flooded every time it rains, another one basically who has a 4 by 2 metre pool of water building up outside his house, and there's months till we get any resolution to this. And my question was really more support for the drainage officers who are really trying to do a job, and I think we really need to review this policy of doing these inspections so infrequently. And I would ask for you to have the time, because obviously it's not your portfolio, I recognise that, to look into this, but then to come back to me with a plan of how as a council we're going to fix this.
Thank you, Charles. You're absolutely right. I don't possess the expertise required to answer, but I am concerned about what you say, and I do think we will need to look at all of this very carefully and come back to you with an answer. Clearly, if there aren't sufficient inspections, and that is a problem, we need to address that. But I suspect there are a multiple set of reasons why there are flooding problems, and that may not be the only one. But I will get you an answer, and I hope very soon.
Alex Freeney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've only just realised I don't get a supplementary question, so tough choices. Residents of Gemini and Messenger Road have been dealing with a whole host of issues relating to the construction work being carried out at the Headley Road East Industrial Development, which is across the road from the world-famous trademark Windows HQ. Most notably, large haulage vehicles are using residential roads as a cut-through, which causes noise and air pollution, as well as posing a danger to children who have no visibility when they're crossing the road on the way to school. Residents have accumulated potentially about an hour's worth of evidence of this through their Ring doorbells. So can I ask the executive member for the local plan, or anyone else who this falls under their jurisdiction, whether video footage can be used as evidence to enforce planning violations? And then my second question, if I can kind of sneak that in as well, I suggested in my speech earlier that potentially imposing parking charges in this residential area, or imposing...
Yeah, just one question, Alex.
Yeah,
come on.
point of order. One question. There's
Will
other
you
members
meet with me
waiting.
to discuss that other issue as well? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Goodness sake.
Can I stand up? Yes.
Yes, you can, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it does fall to me to answer this question, not least because, of course, I have met with you, Alex and Majid, and some of your local residents who are concerned about these very issues. I think you would acknowledge our enforcement officers have been working very hard to try and address the concerns you and your local residents have raised. I'm more than happy to meet you again to discuss these things further.
Rob Comer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Children's Services. Chiltern Way Academy in Westcott has circulated to some of its neighbours a stakeholder consultation document with regard to its imminent expansion in premises and to post-16 students. In it, they've said that this consultation has been circulated to various stakeholders, including local councillors. But this doesn't seem to be true, at least in as far as none of the Westcott Borough councillors were made aware of it. The consultation also seems significantly flawed in other ways, as, for example, the entire description of their proposal detail consists of 5 lines, which is far too little information upon which the consultees can give an informed opinion. Equally, the consultation nowhere considers impact on the local area or residents. This is very regrettable, as the Academy has made great strides and its under-16 provision is laudable. However, this seems as though the Academy Trust has cut corners in trying to rush through this additional provision in advance of the coming academic year. Local residents are extremely concerned that this rush to provision has not taken into account the problems this may cause in the local area. So could the executive member please ask the Academy Trust to provide more information for local ward members and residents and ensure that the consultation is properly conducted before any recommendation is made to the Department for Education?
Thank you for your question. I'm sorry that the consultation has fallen short of what might have been expected. I think what I can do is I'm very happy to facilitate a visit for you, perhaps accompanied by officers, to go and see the Academy Trust to talk it through.
Vishal Srinivasan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a major issue with safety in Shinfield regarding school crossings, speeding, and disruptive parking, which sometimes even disrupts ambulances and emergency services. This should be something of concern to the Wokingham Borough Council, with the number of children and parents being affected by these when going to school and coming back. The high risk posed to them makes it not just something I care about, but also my other Shinfield colleagues. So my questions are, is the council currently planning to do some changes to make these places safer? And can we have a meeting with these officers in charge to discuss the issues that me and other local residents face to support the residents in Shinfield? Thank you.
I assume, sorry, I didn't quite catch that it was addressed to me. I think probably the best thing is we discuss this outside the meeting and take it from there, because it's quite complex, and school crossings and so forth is a complex technical issue, let alone the financial issue. Thank you.
Katrine Harding, please.
Thank you. This is addressed to my colleague Martin, just so you know. So cycling provides many physical and mental health benefits, as well as alleviating congestion and parking challenges. Apologies, I've lost the page. Here we go. Increasing the share of short journeys taken by bike is essential to meeting the borough's climate emergency aspirations. However, collisions and near misses between drivers and cyclists are too common, with the stakes for cyclists very, very high. Residents of Thames Woods in particular want to cycle to school near Walgrave or to work in Reading. So what action is the council taking to improve cycling safety along the A4 corridor?
Catherine, thanks for your question. You're correct, there are huge benefits to cycling and travelling sustainably, and they contribute to a number of the council's priorities. We do want to encourage more people to walk, wheel and cycle, and I appreciate your concerns about this corridor in particular, one which I use myself occasionally. It's mainly along a shared path, and we would recommend, particularly on that shared path, they take care to take into consideration other users on that shared path. Recently, we've improved the shared path by clearing some of the encroaching vegetation, quite a common problem in the more rural areas. Wokingham has produced a long-term plan for walking, wheeling and cycling in the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and this can be found on our My Journey website. A length of the A4 is included in part of the national network and this network as well, our local network. So since 2020, the Department for Transport has been encouraging authorities to follow its LTN 1/20 higher standard of cycle design guidance. And DfT has provided some funding via the Active Travel England ATE to do this. As you highlight, cyclists are very vulnerable road users, and in many situations we would aim to segregate the cycle routes from the carriageway and the vehicle traffic, and also provide segregated walking facilities. The LC WIP follows these principles and makes a number of recommendations along the A4. Whilst there are recommended improvements for the route, we face a significant shortfall in the funding to be able to deliver the whole of the LC WIP in the short term. We are continually seeking funding from any available source, prioritising works when it becomes available. Much of the A4 corridor is part of the national cycle route NCN4 from London to Wales. We are currently discussing possible funding from Sustrans, which is in charge of that route, and we also have commitments from developers to deliver some elements of the LC WIP along the A4. In addition to this study funded by Transport for the South East, a study funded by Transport for the South East is due to conclude in April, covering the length of the A4
Martin,
from
you
Slough
need
to
to
West
wrap
Berkshire.
up, please.
So to ensure that both bus and active travel needs along this route can be considered in any future works. Thank you.
Jackie Rance, please.
Thank you. Another highways question. Bernard Cribbins sang Digging That Hole in 1962, a long time ago, and it seems that long ago since a hole appeared on the pavement Shinfield side of the B3270 Lower Early Way. I first asked about this 4 years ago. I was told there were root problems causing water to seep up and onto the road. In bad weather, there was a massive puddle of water on the road, making driving difficult. A blue fence with weight bags was erected around the hole where the road surface is broken up. Pedestrians have to step into the road to get past. I have reminded the department approximately 6 times in 4 years. I have seen them working on it several times with the promise that it is fixed, but it never seems to be. The last time was beginning of January 2025, when I was told it would all be finished by the end of January. Case closed. The works were not started until the 10th of February. I drove past. There is now no more activity. The hole remains with all the broken tarmac, rubbish dropped, the weight bags and the fencing. We are constantly told there is no money. But what has all this cost over 4 years? And when will the mess be cleared? Thank you.
Jackie, not knowing well, I've got your description, so that's very, very helpful. But the best thing that I can do is speak with the officers and speak with yourself afterwards to try and find out what's the underlying reason. It may be quite complex.
Shahid Yunus, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Highways. Number of residents, you're very popular today. Number of residents in my ward, Bournemouth and Coronation, have complained about the really bad state of Reading Road in Woodley. A few years ago, half the road was serviced and the half the road was left just as it was. It is particularly bad between Western Avenue and where it joins A4. Damage consists of numerous potholes, cracks, service deterioration and delamination. Reading Road is a major B road in Woodley, and is a bus route for a number of buses, including 13, 14 and 19C. I have reported this to the Council. However, can the Executive Member inform us when the WBC road maintenance schedule will be published so the residents know when the roads and streets will be repaired?
Thanks very much for your question. It's nice to be popular. Again, these are quite complicated bits and pieces to do, and off the top of my head I would not be able to answer it, but so I'll give you a written reply. But just to put it in context, recently the total cost of the backlog of road repairs to restore the roads to a normal condition is now gone up by another 6% because of the cumulative impact of 14 years of under maintenance. So it's now £17 billion. It's a staggering sum. It is quite incredible. You can work out the numbers for how much per head of population it is. It runs into several £100 each. So it's going to be difficult to restore everything to the way we would like to have had it, but we're doing our best as an authority. But I'll get back to you with details on this.
Moses Gumna, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't think I was going to have my chance today. My question is to the Executive Member for Economic Development, Sports, Leisure and Arts on behalf of the residents of Hillside Ward, and also a bit for my mental health. In early December 2024, the Executive Member outlined short-term, medium-term and long-term strategies to combat the parking nuisance at Laurel Park that often results in residents being locked in or prevented from accessing their properties safely and securely on football match days. I continue to be inundated with complaints from residents on nearby streets. The Wokingham Borough Enforcement Team is not always available on match days, resulting in ongoing and frustrating traffic gridlock. Can the Executive Member provide progress update on implementation of the strategies and specifically commit that WBC traffic enforcement officers will always be available on match days for on-foot patrol as a deterrent? And how effective is Council liaison with Thames Valley Police in achieving the effective short-term solution? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question, Moses. As you know, I'm working long and hard on this. The short term we achieved with the traffic enforcement. The problem is that with all the rain we've had, sometimes the traffic enforcement's there when there's no games. and then we have to sort of remind them they've got to come the next week. But they are fully committed to that, and we are ticketing. I've worked with the Neighbourhood Action Group, getting on really well with those. The chairman lives in Mayerfield, which he probably should declare an interest, but I'll let him off. So the medium term, we're getting to the end of the season. The football club is really being quite proactive. I'm engaging with the town council, who have been active, perhaps not proactive, but we're working on that. But in the long term, we are going to sort out mitigation. I'm quite happy to talk to you offline. I've talked to you, I've talked to Pauline. I'm working with all stakeholders, and we will get there. But what a football club Laurel Park is. You know, they're a victim of their own success, and we just need the residents to work with us, which they are, to reach that long-term solution. But I really welcome your question. Thank you.
Now we move on to statements by the leader and exec members. Can you please put hands up who wish to speak? Stephen, would you like to start?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues will know that a great deal of work is being undertaken in response to the government's wish to reform local government. There were originally 3 strands to the government's approach. First, the creation of mayoral strategic authorities, which would form a new tier of local government above existing councils. Second, the abolition of county and district councils and their replacement by new unitary councils. And third, a desire to ensure that all unitary councils were of a size that would enable them to be robust and effective. I want to take this opportunity to reassure both members and officers that we see no looming threat to the continued existence of Wokingham Borough Council. It has become clear recently that we will not be subject to external pressure to amalgamate with other Berkshire councils in the foreseeable future. The government's priority is the creation of mayoral strategic authorities and converting county and district councils into unitary councils. Recent statements indicate that the government will not be devoting time and resources to changing the boundaries of existing unitary councils. I want also to take this opportunity to thank Jordan for his work as Executive Member for Environment and Climate Emergency. Jordan, as those of you who were attending the last council meeting will know very well, has been suffering from significant health challenges. It was greatly to his credit that he attended that meeting in order to vote in favour of the budget. He knew it was an important meeting. I was immensely grateful for him for attending. It's to his credit again that he's attended this evening, somewhat to my surprise, because he's still not at all well, and I really thank him for his dedication. But even before Jordan's illness, he was experiencing considerable pressure in his paid work, which made it difficult for him to do all he wanted to do as an executive member. He is a person of great ability, and I have enormous respect for that ability. And I know the last few months have been for him deeply frustrating. I hope that his health will soon improve and that his work pressures will eventually abate. But in the current circumstances, Jordan and I have agreed that it would be best for another colleague to become executive member for Environment and Climate Emergency. I'm delighted to say that Catherine Harding has accepted my invitation to join the executive. She comes to the role with a wealth of relevant experience and knowledge, and I know she will be a great asset to the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Prue Bray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 4 short things. Earlier on this evening, we had a petition presented about Enbrook Sixth Form. I'd just like to reassure everybody that the council has an agreed position with the Academy Trust on the Enbrook Sixth Form, which was expressed in a letter sent to the Trust in May 2024. We are proceeding in accordance with that, and some evidence of progress should begin to emerge later on in the summer. That's all I think I want to say about that. Secondly, I'd like to alert the Council to the fact that, contrary to the impression given by member question earlier in the agenda, which I couldn't answer because we ran out of time, last September we opened 2 new units attached to mainstream schools for children with SEND, and we have several more in the pipeline for 2026. And that this strengthened focus on inclusion, which has the support of our schools and academy trusts, has now been cited in a speech by Sir Martin Oliver, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Schools, so we're being noticed for doing the right thing. On Tuesday, I visited Seaford Court, our completely refurbished accommodation for young people who are leaving care. It is fantastic to see this building being brought back into use at last. We would like to thank Caritas for all they have done for young people through this building in the past, and we look forward to being able to continue to build on their good work from next Monday, when the first young people are due to move in. And finally, the last of 4 pieces of news. Offers of secondary school places were made on the 3rd of March, and I'm very pleased to be able to say that we were able to offer 98% of parents at least one of their choices of school, with 82% getting their first choice. This is significantly better than the position in 2022, the last year of the Conservative administration, when the figures were 94% and 76%. And we should congratulate the team on this remarkable achievement.
Councillor Rachel Bishop-Firth, please.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. As we're reaching the end of the financial year, I wanted to highlight how the Council and our voluntary community sector partners have done a huge amount of work with limited resources to fight poverty in Wokingham. I'm going to be talking in particular about the Household Support Fund, as Councillor Swaddle submitted a question tonight and didn't have the time to ask it. The Household Support Fund comes from central government to help low-income households with essentials such as food and energy bills. During the year, we've given out hundreds of grants directly to pensioners, people with disabilities, unpaid carers, and other households living on low incomes to help them with essentials such as food and energy bills. We've also supported hundreds of families who rely on free school meals in term time with vouchers to pay for food for their children in the school holidays. We work with our voluntary and community sector partners in the Hardship Alliance when deciding where the fund can make the biggest difference. In 2024, the national government made the decision that the winter fuel allowance would only be given to those in receipt of pension credit or certain other means-tested benefits. We were concerned about the potential impact on older residents who are living on low incomes but hadn't registered for these benefits, or who are just outside the point at which they would have been eligible for winter fuel allowance. The Alliance therefore retained a portion of the household support funding in case that was needed. At least partly due to the excellent work of officers and our local voluntary and community sector partners who work tirelessly to promote the uptake of pension credit to eligible residents, not all of these funds were required. The Hardship Alliance has therefore reviewed how best to spend the remaining money within the government guidelines and has identified a number of ways in which the money can be used to help those who need it most. This includes funding for vouchers so that those families who rely on free school meals in term time can feed their children a healthy diet in the Easter school holidays. They've also funded a number of prevention and early intervention initiatives focused on key priorities such as food security. I'm happy to reassure that this year's grant will be spent or committed by the deadline of the 31st of March 2025, and I would like to thank the officers and all of our community and voluntary sector partners for their work in making this happen. Thank you.
Now we move on to statements from council-owned companies. Are there any statements? No statements. Okay, then we move on to motions. So motion 529, Councillor Vishal Srinivasan, will you be proposing this motion?
Yes, I will, yeah.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Shahid. Vishal, would you like to speak to the motion? You've got 3 minutes.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shortly after being elected, a resident in my ward contacted me about an issue. To maintain privacy, I'm not going to get too much into details, but I followed my procedure, escalated it to the officers. But 8 months later, I was shocked to find out the resident was still contacting me to tell me that not only was the issue not solved, it had worsened. Throughout all of this, they nor I had any visibility over the progress of the issue within the council, and the council is now out of step with how services are handled in other walks of life. Anything you buy or order today, you receive live tracking updates, sometimes as much as by the minute. If you have an issue with a product, you get a ticket registered instantly and will be able to track it to see how far it's gone. For example, if you contact Action Fraud, you can see the progression of an issue you've raised. It seems the only place that doesn't exist in life today is at the council level. I'm sure all of you have had hundreds of emails coming in from residents, which you'd promptly reply to and raise it to the respective team. But this would highly benefit from being sent from if you could send back a link for them to be able to track this issue with just the click of a button, rather than you acting as a middleman or middlewoman. Residents contact the council with an issue they have and expect it to be handled directly. However, they then have to usually come to councillors when they feel that it's not being resolved to their satisfaction. So why not have a system where residents can see the progress of their issue? Sometimes the issue isn't solved unless the councillor gets in contact with the officer team, because the issue is so complex, or officers may have unfortunately overlooked it with having so much to deal with. By implementing such a tracking system, there would be full visibility on both sides as to how far the case has progressed. It would minimize councillors chasing officers and officers having to provide email updates back to councillors. I hope all councillors in the chamber tonight agree that not only would residents of the borough benefit from the system, but desperately need it in order to make the borough more trustworthy, accountable, and to take it to the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak against? Rachel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment to this.
Sorry, you need a seconder as well, sorry. Thank you. The seconder of the original motion, Shahid, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to submit an amendment to this motion.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We haven't seen this amendment, so we're going to have to ask for an adjournment so we can properly look at this. Thank you.
What, do you want 10 minutes or
Yeah,
5
10
minutes?
minutes. Well, we haven't seen it. Unfortunately, the Liberal Democrats haven't spoken to us, which would have been useful before the meeting. So we haven't seen it, so we need proper time to consider this.
Okay, we'll do 10 minutes then. So where am I? Oh, yes. So in terms of this amendment, there is the piece on the peach-coloured paper, which is a precursor to this motion calls, which is this amendment proposes that this matter be referred to the executive to allow a full business case to be developed and reviewed to include input from overview and scrutiny. That is an amendment, and there is a deletion in what it would be the second paragraph. In the age of digital convenience, that whole piece is deleted. The missing piece at the bottom of this relating to reducing administrative burden is not a deletion, it's just not been printed. So it is as per the agenda. So that is the definition of the amendment. Right, Rachel, you have 3 minutes to speak to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for submitting this motion, Vishal. The Council's commitment in the Customer Experience Strategy and Customer Charter is to improve the experience for our customers, however they contact us. We're committed to improving all the factors that you highlight here: ease of use, transparency, accountability and responsiveness. The strategy commits the Council to taking a data-driven approach to decision making. We need to understand what our customers want, the full financial implications and our technology options before making important decisions such as this one. For that reason, I'm proposing that we refer this motion to the Executive. This allows us to ensure that a full business case is developed and that it utilises the overview and scrutiny process before a decision is made. This way we will have the full information so that we can make the best decision for our residents. The Council follows the Government's digital service design principles when designing online services and takes part in regular government audits of the website's accessibility. These audits set the Council's online priorities, which are to ensure that our customers find systems intuitive and easy to navigate. This is the focus of current improvements. There are two important issues we need to consider with a proposal for a one-stop shop where customers log in to track issues. Firstly, how customers want to use our site. Our data tells us that many of our residents want to access the WBC website to get one piece of information at a time or to submit a single inquiry or request. For example, they want to report a pothole. When the Council launched a customer portal a few years ago, the overwhelming customer feedback was that registering for an account to do this type of transaction was a barrier, not a benefit. The second point is the work required to integrate all the Council's different software systems onto one main tracking system. This would be a major undertaking, and we need to understand the ramifications before making a commitment. I hope that we can all agree tonight that this careful consideration and scrutiny is needed before any firm commitment is made to ensure that we find the best way forward for our residents. Thank you.
Vishal, do you accept the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, I reluctantly accept the amendment to this motion in the hope that it will secure their support. However, I think it weakens from what would be a bold step for transparency. And we have seen this approach from the administration by kicking it down the road. And I think that rather than embracing meaningful action...
A yes or no I was looking for. Really.
I reluctantly...
Rather than...
I reluctantly accept, so yes.
Thank you. So, as it's a yes, the amendment is incorporated and becomes a substantive motion. Does anybody want to talk on the substantive amended motion?
Speak against it.
So I've got 3 people there.
Speaking against the motion.
Can I clarify that? Does any member wish to speak against the motion, the amended motion? Really? Are you sure? That wasn't a very... I think that's a no. In that case... Sorry?
Chairman.
Are you convinced now?
Can I just make a quick point?
Go ahead, please.
So, I think the point which Rachel made, I think she fails to understand the motion itself. It is not about the way the website is the works. It's about interaction with the users, with the customers. And as Michelle highlighted in his motion, she completely misses the point. So I'm just concerned that raises another concern from our point of view, that even the executive does have a look at it, they've completely missed the point of this whole motion. This motion is about when each stage of the status changes of whatever the concern might be, they should be automatically, the resident should be automatically notified of the change. So this is what is happening now. That is what the change is, what is going to happen. So that is the point it's making, it's a tracking system, just like if you order something online and each stage you'll get a track. So that is the point.
I think we're going a bit down a rabbit hole. You know, if Rachel is saying there needs to be research into IT infrastructure to work out what the implications are, and then you say, no, there isn't, however, you want automatic replies, which would have to be from IT infrastructure, I can't agree with that position. Alex, are you speaking against? Or?
Yeah, I will speak against. It's just a quick one. If anybody supporting this motion can explain where they're going to find £150,000 plus £40,000 a year maintenance, then I'm happy to vote in favour.
Charles, please.
Mr. Mayor, one point here, which my main concern about this, this is about residents' experiences with the council. Now, I understand the logic that's been put from the administration about wanting to put forward a business case. I don't necessarily agree with the method, and I have concerns about the time, but my question would be, this needs to come back to council. This is a question, basically, that is being raised by everybody's residents, not just the residents of the executive.
Stephen, please.
I must confess to a degree of confusion. I thought Vishal had accepted, however reluctantly, the amendment. I don't believe that his colleagues are now going to vote against him in his proposal that the amendment be accepted. So I think we should just proceed, surely. There isn't anything to debate any longer.
I completely agree, Stephen. I think we should go straight to the vote because there's no real people speaking against the amended motion. So all of those in favour of the amended motion? Thank you. Those against? Abstaining? What's going on here? Calm down, everyone. Any abstentions, please? Okay, the amended motion is carried then. Right, now we move on to motion 530. Councillor Andy Ng-Si Hong, will you be proposing this motion?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. Andy, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Thank you all for supporting this motion. No matter in the chamber or many more in front of the screen, no matter you are the resident I knocked on the door yesterday or the protester we met last Saturday, this motion is about our democratic value, one of the things that connect all the people in this chamber and in this great country. Colleagues, as we know, Rockingham is a growing Hong Konger population, including myself, who witnesses the crackdown of Hong Kong. Many of us deeply value freedom, democracy, and human rights, and are concerned about the Chinese Communist Party influence in UK. They plan to build a massive super embassy on the site of former Royal Mint in London. This isn't just about a building, it's about what it represents. It raised concern about overseas police station, transnational repressions, spy base, lack of protest base, and broader UK-China relation, etc. These concerns are shared by MPs, the media, local residents, and Hong Kongers across the UK. We must ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want to build? I believe our voices must be heard, and our democratic value must be preserved. Within 2 months, thousands of Hong Kongers, including those from Rockingham, protest at the site twice. Due to the large turnout and limited space, both protests lead to chaotic and undesirable situations, clearly showing that there is not enough space to protest against the Chinese Communist Party. Colleagues, you may ask, what is the purpose of the motion? I can answer you. Though we are not the minister who make the final decisions, as elected representatives, we have a duty to speak out on the concern of the people. Becoming the first local council to pass the motion and say no to the Chinese super embassy is symbolic. Just a week, I've already heard from another council that may follow our lead. I hope that together we can raise awareness about this issue in our society and ultimately stop the Chinese super embassy. Colleagues, as a former Hong Kong Democracy Camp District Councillor who fled to the UK, I was welcomed and supported by my dear colleagues and the people, and elected as a borough councillor. I know that it is our shared value of freedom, democracy, and human rights that bind us together. Tonight, because our values matter, because the protests matter, because the rights of our residents matter, because we call this place our home. We must stand firm and say no to the Chinese super embassy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone wish to speak against this motion? Rachel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will be brief.
Sorry, you need a seconder as well, sorry.
No, I don't.
The seconder needs to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Or reserve the right.
Sorry, Stephen, do you wish to speak or reserve your right?
I'd love to hear what Rachel's got to say first.
Are you really objecting to... Are you really against this, please? Off you go.
It's rather a loaded comment there from the Mayor, but anyway, I will be brief. So many of us in the Chamber, perhaps even the majority of us have been approached by residents about issues beyond the borough's borders. Often these are not just passing concerns, but they're matters that people care really deeply about and in some cases, profoundly affect their lives. But while it may be extremely frustrating, the Constitution, we believe, is clear that Council can only debate motions on matters within its responsibility or which affect Woking Borough. This motion doesn't meet those clear criteria, so we cannot positively support it this evening.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Prove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of people who have had to leave Hong Kong have chosen to make their new home in Woking Borough. We are very pleased that they are now part of our community, and we hope that they feel welcome. The Liberal Democrats are proud that it was a former leader of our party at Paddy Ashdown who fought for the people of Hong Kong to be given the right of abode in the UK if China reneged on promises made in the Sino-British Declaration of 1984. The motion may seem to some, as we've seen with the public question and now with Rachel's speech, to deal with matters that are beyond the interests of the Borough Council. The Chinese embassy is not proposed to be built in our borough, and the protests that have been taking place against it have also not taken place in our borough. But I believe we need to look at the wider context and not take such a narrow view. First, a significant number of people from Hong Kong are now our residents, and we should be representing their interests. And secondly, we cannot ignore the fact that one of the reasons they have come to the UK is that their rights, especially their right to dissent and to show that dissent through public protest, were taken away from them by the new Hong Kong regime run by the Chinese government. That makes it all the more important that we ensure that we preserve the right to protest peacefully for them, as well as for everyone else in the UK. There are widespread concerns about the proposed Chinese super embassy, not just from people from Hong Kong. Many are questioning the implications for our national security if it goes ahead. A particular concern is about how it might be used for surveillance. Surveillance may well be taking place already, and people from Hong Kong who are our residents have more reasons than most to worry about it. To make a more general point, I visited both China and Hong Kong. I do not see China as of necessity being an enemy of the UK, but we should think carefully about what is in our national interest. This applies to relations with any nation. We only have to look at what has happened with regard to the US to know that things can change rapidly. And national security affects this borough as much as everywhere else. So this is a motion that affects us in Woking Borough, and failure to support it will send a very negative message to those from Hong Kong who are now part of our community. Please don't let them down.
Are there any amendments to this motion? No. Okay. Yes, Stephen, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, Rachel's point is very similar to the one made earlier by Andy about the motion's accordance with the Constitution. I do understand your point, but it is very important to say, of course, that our officers looked at this very carefully before they agreed to the motion coming forward, and they did agree it. We're fortunate to live in a country with constitutional checks and balances that prevent the abuse of power and protect our liberties. We are less fortunate to live in a world where those protections against misrule and the loss of liberty are increasingly under pressure, even in those countries that have a proud record of creating important constitutional safeguards. Hong Kongers make a great and welcome contribution to our community here in Wokingham. They should be allowed to continue doing so without fearing that the kind of oppression that forced them to leave their homeland has followed them to this country. All authoritarian governments are highly sensitive to any form of criticism or dissent. They fail to see what appears to us as obvious. Opposition can play a valuable role in correcting error and in obliging those in power to explain and justify what they are doing. There is already evidence that the Chinese authorities are undertaking surveillance of Hong Kongers in Britain, including in Wokingham Borough. A new super embassy in London will no doubt make that surveillance easier. Its physical presence will also be an intimidating reminder for our Hong Kong residents of the long reach of the Chinese state. Our country's government must, of course, continue to engage constructively with China whenever it can, but we owe it to our Hong Kong residents to stand up with them and to be clear that the values they support are our values and values that we hold very dear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and let's move to a vote on this motion. All those in favour of this motion, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. That is the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.